Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly hangout where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable or on the Facebook event page for episode 94. As usual, my name is John Ruark, host and moderator, and I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. Now hand it off to Robert Johnson.
Hey guys, Robert Johnson here, the past master of Waukegan Lodge number 78 and current secretary and host of the Wednesday Meet Masonic podcast.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Nick Johnson.
Hey, it's Nick Johnson, past master Corinthian Lodge number 67 in Big Time, Farmington.
Thank you, Nick. And last but not least, Jason Richards. Say hello.
Hello. And welcome to the Masonic Roundtable. I'm Jason Richards, the junior warden for 4 more days.
What happened?
Presumed of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia. Elections on Thursday. And if all goes according to plan, booyah, progressive lines, senior warden on Saturday.
Woo! Nice.
Well, they can't get rid of you that easy. Best of luck. And I'll try to be
Look
there.
well from the west.
Well, you know what? They could deem me unfit as I have not successfully set the lodge on fire yet this year. Remember, that's how I got advanced to junior warden, so I couldn't play with candles anymore, so we'll see.
You got to do something bigger.
Yes.
You don't need no water.
Alrighty, let's move into any Masonic news we have this week. I know, Jason, you said you found one article.
Yes. Actually, I found 2 items of interest. So, first and foremost, everybody loves GoFundMe campaigns, right? They're the bee's knees, especially when you want $100,000 to study Freemasonry.
Why didn't I think of that?
You can't make this up. This was something that was brought to our attention on the blog Gleanings from the Golden Dawn. Yes, is 100K actually needed to study Freemasonry? And you know what?
Yes. Dues,
Yes,
dues,
absolutely.
and more dues.
Well, you know what? Those dues pile up, and with all the petition and degree fees, and temple dues for the shrine, you're gonna have to.
Beer tabs.
Yes. Yeah. Restocking the Grandmaster's liquor cabinet, etc. The one thing I have to point out, though, the only comment on this GoFundMe page is amazing. Like, join the lodge. It costs less than that.
Costs less than 100K. How much has this person raised?
$0.
All right, so
100,000K.
There's still
Come on,
time.
guys, we gotta help him out.
Yes.
It's like eBay. Everyone's going to snipe in at the last minute.
How much does it cost to study Freemasonry? The Masonic Roundtable is free, folks. Mic drop.
Just saying.
Yes.
So we'll move into the other interesting article of awesomeness.
This just in, TMR is now going up to 100K.
Oh, awesome.
Subscription fees.
Yes. We'll be turning off all of our legacy episodes tomorrow.
Not really.
So speaking of how TMR has a grip on everybody in the world, the Freemasons apparently have kept a grip on Britain for 200 years, according to the Mirror. And this is getting back to the Ancestry.com website, releasing all the names of Freemasons up through 1925. And Britain being a bit more suspicious of the Masonic fraternity than the United States, has published an article about all of these new people they discovered to be Freemasons who who were crazy high in British society, like Winston Churchill and Oscar Wilde, and this guy I don't know the name of, and this guy who's kind of bent over and wielding a cricket bat, and
You don't know that famous cricketer something Jardine? How could
Douglas
you?
Jardine.
There we go.
Rudyard
So famous.
Kipling, Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington. Ooh, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. That's kind of awesome.
So, it just kind of hit me. This is like the British version of the AshleyMadison.com leak.
Yes.
I'm going to go look through the whole database. I'm going to go find who were Freemasons, who were on that site.
Except, yeah, all the members outed were dead. And
as well as all of the Ashley Madison guys are now dead.
Yes. They had to talk about the Titanic.
Of course.
And
Wait for it.
Jack the Ripper.
Hey, all right.
So, yeah.
Wait a minute.
Infamous Victorian serial killer Jack the Ripper may have escaped justice because of a Freemason cover-up.
So basically, murder by decree.
Yes.
Yes.
Watch it on Netflix.
Yeah, you can just check that out on Netflix. I like how they have a picture of him. I mean, that's kind of cool. I mean, because we know who he was.
Well, especially in action too. I'm glad they found an action.
Yes.
Yes. Wait, that kind of looks like Sherlock Holmes.
Oh my God, Sherlock Holmes was.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was Jack the Ripper, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first.
We just decoded that. You see what we did for you?
Yeah.
That didn't cost you $100K.
Oh my gosh!
We're
did you see that
totally,
he was part of the Supreme Grand Council of Freemasons. Supreme Grand Council.
You know what? We
I'm not
totally
even-
need to collect royalties off of the movies that are going to be made.
I'm gonna be rich.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Robert, you found something else in the news this week?
So here, I'll start my screen share, and I'll come over here. This was an interesting one that just popped up on my Twitter feed this morning or yesterday. Published 2 days ago. Has Freemasonry ship sailed? They used the Royal Ark Mariner flag.
I get it.
Milling aground.
I get jokes.
I guess that's the ship that sailed. It's actually it's not too bad of an article. It kind of talks about the Grand Lodge of England recently releasing the names of Freemasons under its jurisdiction up to the 1923. It talks about pros and cons, and really it takes halfway through the article to actually get to the point. Has Freemasonry ship sailed? Yes and no. The guy says yes and no. So I mean it's a kind of a wimpy article. It doesn't really take a stance either way, but it's pretty good. I mean, it's a good read. It talks about how unlikely it would be that a Freemason today would be made president or a prime minister or something along those lines because of multiple different reasons. And they talk about, with all of the things that are globally going on right now, there's many things that are more interesting than who was a Freemason. So, decent article.
Wait, are you telling me that this picture that I'm sharing right about
Wait for it.
now is not true?
That is. You mean Obama was not holding a square and compass?
What? Dang it.
I love how it's like the most generic thing too. Like the top of the compass isn't even
It's all
there.
cut off. It's photoshopped. I can tell by the pixels.
I can tell.
Looks legit.
That's not even good enough for worth 1,000. Come on.
So, all right, I'm going to ask you guys. Starting with Nick, has Freemasonry's ship sailed?
In its current Rotarian style, yes. I think it's entering a new age, and we're watching the decline happening very rapidly, especially in lodges that are older. They're either losing members and dying, or the older members are just kind of fading away, and the new members are taking over. So I think, at least in terms of a Rotarian style, which is community-centric and not so much esoteric, yeah, that's going to die. And die fast.
Robert? Has the ship sailed?
It's funny that you mentioned that because I posted this thing on the Grand Lodge of Illinois' Facebook page, and then also again on the Winding Stairs, which basically had the different logos of your Rotarian Society, your Moose, your Elks, and the Masons. And I said, they all have ritual, they all have obligations, they all have ceremonies, they're all family-oriented, they're all fraternities, kind of. Why'd you pick the Masons? And I tried to guide the conversation, doing the typical what else, what else, what else, until I got to the answers I was looking for. And I don't find what that answer really boiled down to pretty much anywhere. People say we make good men better, and I say how? And they say, well, because. Well, let me tell you, guys, Christians, Muslims, Judaism, any religion has men's group or things like that where guys get together, they study scripture, they form a fellowship, a bond, a brotherhood, if you will, and they are making each other better. But outside of degree work, I don't see us doing that. So has our boat sailed? Totally agree with Nick. In its current state, the Rotarian Society, it has sailed. It's done. It's going away, and I say good riddance.
Jason.
So the question is not, has Freemasonry's ship sailed?
No, that's exactly what the question was.
The question, no. Shush.
Answer the damn question.
Don't want to answer the damn question.
What is the definition of is?
Right. The question really is, where is Freemasonry's ship sailing to?
Ooh, the destination.
That's deep.
Because the fact of the matter is, organizations change, as often as the membership generations do, and or unless they have strict things in place like the U.S. Constitution or things of that nature. Thankfully, Masonry is a bit more fluid in its governance structure, and it enables the organization to keep its relevance by morphing and adapting not its core principles, however, perhaps the execution of the fraternity and the research interest of those members, and Masonry is flexible enough to be able to morph with the times and the members, and I think I echo everybody's sentiments where we're seeing much more of a return to that esoteric philosophical research based society of brothers who still want to make themselves into better men. But you're seeing much more of an inward focus on improving the self, vice the outward Rotarian. Rotarian. I can't talk good tonight.
Well,
we're seeing much more inward focus on improving the self through self-knowledge and esoteric knowledge, as opposed to the outward focus, improving the community around you actively as part of a Rotarian society.
Thank you. My answer, according to the stats last week, yes. On to Nick for the MMQOT.
Wow.
That was a segue. I mean, it was kind of like the segue that went off the cliff
That literally went off the cliff.
with the guy on it.
The owner or the.
And that's super funny. No, that's never funny. That's like President Lincoln jokes. Those
Wasn't that like a scene in Mac and Me?
I think it was actually. I love that movie. Yes, it was.
We don't need Lincoln jokes like we need a hole in the head. So just move on.
Ooh.
You're all weak.
Man, I would high five you, but I can't. Okay, so here we go. Answers for the week of November 23rd, 2015 was our own George Washington. George Washington. And no, it did not involve cutting down a cherry tree. Although maybe I'll ask that question sometime. So congrats, Steve Whitaker, Richard Holland, Justin Miller, John Green, Greg Guffey, Christopher Croteau, Michael Overturf, Simon Dick, James Webb, Joey Boyer, Greg Bodine. There we go. You're going to correct me again. That's okay. Kenneth Lotman, Steve Higdon, Michael Laidlaw, Lou Bedford, Christopher Fetko, Sean Griffith, Frank Scrobot, Chuck Springer. Scrobot, there we go. I got it now. Larry Fama, Heber Longhurst, Jared Chapman, Will Fowler, and Jonathan Doucette. And there might have been one more. So if I missed you, sorry. All right, so the question for... hold on. There we go. The question for the week of November 30th, 2015. In almost all versions of Preston Webb Ritual, the song known as Playals, is that how you say it? Playals? There we go.
Playals
hymn is played. Its creator, Ignaz Pleyel, not surprisingly, was a Mason. Your question, in which lodge is he recorded as a member? Your bonus question, under what Grand Lodge was his lodge chartered? When you have the answer, send it to masonicmonday@gmail.com. Don't forget to include your lodge name, your lodge number, and the hashtag Go Timberwolves. There we go. I said it. Go Timberwolves. I think I'm the only one who ever says that, so...
Yeah. I've never heard that before.
I know. It's rare. I just try to see what everybody says. I will not say it. And I wouldn't fault you. Back to you, John.
Moving on. Let's get to tonight's topic, which is part 3 of our 4-part series on the 4 cardinal virtues. We have since covered... what have we covered? Oh, we've covered temperance, we've covered fortitude, and now we're on to prudence, and next week will be justice. Again, these are cardinal virtues that go back all the way as far back as Plato's writings, and have then been resurfaced by a lot of early theologians like St. Thomas Aquinas and others, where they're trying to apply these 4 elements, these 4 characteristics of the human psyche, if it will, to be a better person. So tonight we're going to talk about prudence, and as we've kind of covered in previous episodes, prudence has different definitions if you look at it from the original context and the modern context, and we'll figure out how we apply that to Masonry today as we know it. So I think I want to start with the modern English definition of prudence, which has more of a connotation of cautiousness, synonymous with being cautious. In that sense, it would be wise for a Mason to be prudent to make sure that people aren't getting the secrets of Freemasonry illegally, right? That you want to be aware of your surroundings. How else would one apply cautiousness in their daily life as a Mason or in their Masonic life?
I tell my children to use prudence when crossing the street.
Be cautious. That's true. Jason?
You also probably tell your children to use prudence when crossing a past master.
That's a true story.
I mean, it's as simple as picking your battles in the lodge, right? You will have disagreements. And even as a lodge officer or even as worshipful master, presumably, not speaking from experience, you will have brethren and past masters with whom you vehemently disagree. And at some point, prudence has to weigh in, and you have to realize that it's not worth winning every battle if you can't bring everybody else along with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's the preservation of harmony in its whole, rather than causing, a schism. So,
So we've covered how you should apply that cautiousness, that awareness into lodge. Looking at some of the earlier definitions, of course, you know me, I like to peel back and look at the layers behind that. What was the original context? The ancient definition really meant wisdom, or more appropriately, practical wisdom, or the applied wisdom, meaning another word for it could be insight. So if hindsight is when you go back and look at your decisions you've made, some of your poor choices you've made, and you said, man, I wish I could have done that better. I wish I had not said this to that person. This applied or practical wisdom, this new prudence really means stopping, thinking before you speak, look before you leap. And so I think that's a better philosophical application of Masonry, not just to stop and think before, ears are around, so you're not giving out any Masonic secrets. I don't think that's the implied intent, but as a virtue in your daily life, not just in lodge, but everywhere you go. Holding your tongue, stopping and thinking, thinking about the repercussions of not only what you say, but other choices you make. And so I think that is something that shows leadership and shows integrity of a person. So also all these good qualities we want in Masons, why I think we're inculcating those values in the degrees. What are your thoughts on that?
Just that what is interesting is you brought up you really went back and you peeled the layers back to the ancient meaning of, essentially governing and disciplining, thinking about everything before you do it. Like in your daily life, if you work let's say in emails all day long, you really want to think about that email before you send it, or sleep on that car before you buy it. You know what I'm saying? Those are all modern day, I guess, average Joe reasonings behind prudence, and how you can apply it with the foresight, looking ahead in the future. I'm not sure. Outside of that, I was kind of looking forward to the conversation tonight because
those are great examples, actually.
Those are really where I stop.
Those are great ones, because you could take that as the other definitions of having, making prudent choices, making prudent financial decisions, or prudent purchases. Sleep on the car. Yeah, I never do that.
Holy cow!
Purely impulse buying. Amazon.com.
Do they kill you with that one-click stuff?
Yes. As long as you're on smile.amazon.com and donating to your charity, it's all good.
Yeah.
Think of the children.
So I find it interesting because prudence is inherently subjective. It is a very personal thing, because what is prudent to me is not going to be what is prudent to John. And actually, Aristotle talks about this in his work Nicomachean, Ethics, where he talks about that practical wisdom is not scientific knowledge, is evident, it's just goes to show that in order to be prudent, you can't really rely on others. You really have to rely on your own experience. And so it's again, prudence is, if we get it back to the 7 liberal arts and sciences, prudence is the practical application of logic to any situation in lodge, at least with a little bit of a subjective bent. But it's not just a gut reaction. It involves a distinct thought process of weighing different parts of the situation and then making, or what is called, a deliberative effort by Aristotle, and making a decision on what is going to be right for you, or extension, the people around you. So it's not a gut check, and it's not an objective scientific process.
I like that you said it was subjective. Again, to kind of bring it back to the layman, it is subjective in that I don't know how many times, growing up, an elder would say to me, "You should have thought," or "What made you think that if you did this?" They clearly have that foresight, but then again, maybe it's hindsight. that they're saying, they learned this in hindsight, and apparently I'm supposed to know this and have this in foresight.
And have the foresight and insight. That's hilarious.
So, that is interesting. Definitely. Totally agree, Jason.
One of my favorite quotes is, "If I have seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants." Because I try to apply that, if I'm at work and I'm learning something, doing some sort of on-the-job learning, I'm going to not repeat the mistakes that other people, my other coworkers have made, right?
Right.
So I'm going to use their hindsight for my foresight, my insight. I also think it's hilarious if you really look at the origin of that quote that Newton was talking about a hunchback colleague of his, so he's standing on his shoulders. But that's a different story.
So, and getting back to what we were talking about last week with, I believe it was St. Augustine, and talking about, temperance and fortitude or courage being part of the irrational parts of the mind, the intuition, the gut reactions, whereas prudence is elevated to this rational, contemplative decision-making virtue. So in a lot of ways, prudence kind of sits over top of the other two, as a higher cognitive functioning virtue.
Yeah.
And again, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's like chess. You're constantly thinking not just the one step ahead, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 moves ahead. That greater cognitive thinking enables you to essentially win by, previous games lost, learning and thinking about how what could happen if you do this, and this could happen. Chess is a prudent game.
Well, and we've said it before, but your experience is going to color your deliberative process,
Your decision-making
your
process.
application
Yep.
of prudence. And it's interesting, you can see this anywhere, but what you think is prudent is not going to match up with others in your lodge. And I think a big question to talk about here
Or your wife.
True story.
Fair enough. Yet she still takes me out in public. A big question here is, what do you do when what you feel is prudent or your application of the virtue of prudence is at odds with someone else, especially in a lodge setting?
Mm-hmm. Nick, what do you think?
Well, I think it's one of those that you have to balance in the concept of fortitude, which would be the active part. Prudence is, I kind of judge it in the same way as the ego. If you're into that kind of understanding of the mind, which is that it is one of those. I think it's called the chariter of the virtues is what prudence is, and it's the one that decides how you should act. And then it's after that, it's where you go from there. So for me, if you have somebody who is just not meeting your expectations, whether it be ethical expectations or whether it be prudent financial decisions, you have a different way in which to interact financially than they are. At that point, you have to exercise the other virtues, particularly fortitude and probably justice, while tempering yourself, just so that you can move on. Prudence, you don't want it to go to the point of just acquiescence. It can't just be, it's an since we've said it before already here, it's an applied method of ethical thinking. It's not just theoretical. It's not just Sophia. It's a practical way in which we take what we believe, what we think, past experiences, and we apply equity and equitable solutions, and then use the other virtues to come up with solutions. And this is particularly important in groups, because groups, as we've said here, everybody has their own. I don't know if I would say that prudence is going to be different. It's not. I don't know if it's subjective in the way that in ethical thought, I'm more of the person that believes that ethics, since they are derived from some kind of specific design in the universe. I think at least with prudence, even though it's coming from you and your own past experiences, it's the mixture of all of them together, and that sounds very Hegelian, but this, it's one of those that once the whole mind of the group comes to a decision, then hopefully all the problems and arguments and things like that can be smoothed over time. It's kind of like working a rough stone and making it smooth. Brought it back.
Mic drop.
That's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching.
Oh, you know me. I've still got more to talk about.
Fact.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
And the thing is we're bringing up Thomas Aquinas and other guys like that. It's kind of interesting. Temperance was kind of focused on the rude individual. The person that's the farmer, the laborer, somebody like that. Fortitude was the soldier. Prudence was represented by the clergy. And that makes perfect sense because clergy, they spend large amounts of time applying a text, whether it's the Bible or what the Desert Fathers had said or something like that, and then applying that to situations and then giving that advice to the people. So it makes sense that for them, they're more of the people who are carving the stones, working them, and doing that with other people. So it's one of those. That's how I've been kind of exploring all these is the different people within a medieval society, and this would be the clergy, the thinkers, those who are moving on to the next level in thought.
So this brings me to another point that I think prudence is another way of saying that you're governing your actions, and I think that's another reason why we're taught to govern ourselves accordingly, right? Depending on the situation, we have to really govern ourselves and our actions, our behaviors, our actions, our thoughts, and our what we say. But not just in lodge, but all times. But that's why we incorporate that into the ritual. Kind of reminds me of this is how you remember weird things like all the way back from your past. Some sage advice from an old middle school gym coach. Someone asked him, well, he says, you need to start being mature, and he's like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by being mature? And he had the most perfect definition of it, which applies to prudence, which is doing the right thing even when no one's watching. And I love that very succinct definition to just do the right thing always. Do the right thing even if no one's watching. Don't expect any reward out of it. Just do the right thing.
You know what my gym coach used to tell me? He used to tell me, "Good Lord, Nick, 12-minute miles? Can't you run faster than that? I got things to do."
Jump over that hurdle. So we had different gym coaches. Got it.
Very.
Yep. RJ, what else you got?
I'm just listening. You guys are killing it, man.
We're killing it.
You have so many great points. Going, you're bringing in ancient philosophers, guys like Aquinas, and you're just pulling it all together. Especially for me, I didn't really prudence. For me, the way you guys are talking about it in this episode just is pulling it all together. Yeah. And like I said, this is my learning episode for me, really.
Cool.
What Robert is trying to say is that he is shocked that neither of you are talking from your rears.
His BS meter is not even on the
But there's still time.
Yeah.
No, absolutely fabulous. I was a little worried because Nick wasn't talking for a while, and I was hoping that he would definitely give us some light. So
I was prudentially laying through what you were saying.
I see what you did there.
I went from Sophia and I decided that I would listen a little bit, and then finally I'd shock you all.
Drop the hammer.
That's
So,
true, like Thor.
it's interesting how I think in today's Masonic society, at least, the virtues of prudence and temperance can often be, I think, wrongfully interchanged. Right? You look at the junior warden, whose goal is to guard the craft, from intemperance and excess. Well, we talked about temperance 2 weeks ago, and we said it's not just alcohol. And it's a fine line between the idea of temperance as abstainment, as is classically defined, and the idea of temperance as caution,
which
or
is,
thinking about things before acting.
So which is actually, again, one of the definitions of prudence, right? Is caution, right? So holding back, which, if you really step back and look at the system of morality defined by these four cardinal virtues, that they are intertwined on purpose. That you need temperance in order to apply prudence. Think about that, right? You need to be able to stop, hold back, not shoot your mouth off or not shoot at the hip, and hold yourself back so you can apply some memory work. You can go back and consider your past decisions.
Well, you can't. You can't action prudence, again, like Nick was saying, unless you have the fortitude. And if all goes well, or all goes as it should, the natural effect of applying fortitude to prudence should be justice.
Yep, and it's kind of interesting, kind of to jump into that. We have both theological virtues, those faith, hope, and charity, right? And then we have these cardinal virtues, prudence, or temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. And we can discuss this in the next episode, because then it'll be a nice tie-in. But these are applied values. These are applied ethical concepts. The three theological virtues are spiritual. These are ethical applications, by which you've taken those theological virtues and moved them onto how you would interact with the world around you. So that's kind of the, it makes perfect sense in a Masonic fraternity, because we discuss things like how do we improve ourselves, how do we act in public. The closing charge, at least here, essentially says, everyone has a claim on your good offices, right? So it's the idea of action. And so all these cardinal virtues, every single one of them, require an application. Even the wisdom itself, because this is phronesis, which is completely different than Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
So this is application, and every single one of these is an application. Temperance, you're applying restraint. Fortitude, you are applying endurance, and this one you are applying wisdom to a situation. And I think that makes perfect sense in a Masonic speculative craft, that we would have actually applied these.
Nick, you might agree with this, but here we just call it the past master degree. Do you call it the virtual past master or the past master degree?
For which one? For the chapter?
For chapter, yes.
Because I kind of wrote my own, but I don't really talk about it. But yeah, chapter, we call it the past master degree. We don't really call it virtual past master. I get corrected by a grand high priest all the time. So
yeah. So the way you were talking about all of the things and how we apply them, I started to kind of think about that past master degree.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep. It's the most practical of all the degrees. The second being the Mark Master of every single degree that we do, and it makes perfect sense. I mean, both of those are degrees of application, and I think it makes perfect sense to take what we're learning here, the cardinal virtues, take the symbolic natures, the symbolic meanings that you're seeing in those degrees, and apply them, especially in the past master degree. I mean, it's explicit,
Yeah, it really is kind of interesting. I mean, to those listening who have participated in that past master degree, but it is one of the only times I think where I've been forced to use exactly what I had been lectured about in a setting.
Immediately.
Immediately. Yeah. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. One other thing I was going to mention too, to kind of tie this together, is if prudence is the practical application of applying some reason, it's the logical application of reason, right? Going back and looking at all your choices, looking at all your options, calculating what's the best result for you and for humanity, right? The best result of all the parties involved. Another thing that I'm trying to work on is basically trying to focus on one thing at a time, and this is kind of a life hack kind of thing. It goes to Zen Buddhism, it goes to lean manufacturing, single piece flow. I've kind of smushed a lot in there. Go Google it, but it's basically focusing on one thing at a time. Stop multitasking. Multitasking is awful. Nobody can do it, so stop kidding yourself that you can. But by deliberately focusing on one thing at a time, you're applying prudence to that object, that action you're taking. You're not distracted. You are in the moment. You're being mindful of the decision you have to make at that time, and you're not distracted by anything else. And that is, I think, a very good real-world thing of how can you slow down, do one thing well instead of 5 things horrible.
Don't be a Greek restaurant.
That serves tacos.
Ha!
And hamburgers and spaghetti and chicken fingers. Listen, be the Greek restaurant. Euros, salads, feta cheese. Got this.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All right, it's about quarter of. Jason, why don't you switch over to social media so we can bring them in?
All right, so ordered. So we've had a lot of really good discussion on social media tonight from Taylor Kleineck, who we met actually at I believe we met actually at the MRF symposium. So he posited a question which I think is interesting. He asks, are there times, or are there not times when prudence is objective? We talked about the inherently subjective nature of it, where a choice shows a lack of prudence. Otherwise, prudence doesn't really mean anything. There are times when multiple solutions are possible, but some are clearly bad, and choosing a bad solution is clearly not prudent. What do you all think about whether or not prudence, which can arguably be an inherently subjective virtue, can ever be the object of choice?
Like an Ouroboros.
Well, it comes down to an ethical understanding. The idea of things like just war, or what constitutes life, what is morality, things like that. Personally, I think that there's at least some universal ethical standard. I know that's a very, very not modern take on that, especially post.
Would you say it's the great trestle board?
I would argue yes. I back into the Enlightenment era and say that yes, there is some kind of hand working itself even in ethical decisions, and I think there is a time in which you have to weigh those things. In courts they have a thing called law and equity. Some things are legal and some things are equitable, and sometimes the equitable choice is the right one, but that takes a lot of fortitude. It takes a lot of temperance and it takes a lot of justice to come to those kind of decisions, and you'll finally come with some kind of prudential judgment on those. And it can be very difficult. I mean, right now, I asked that question in my lodge. I said, "What is Masonic morality?" And that's I got all kinds of different answers from. The volume of sacred law gives us where those ethical standards are found, to, there are no ethical standards. It's since we're all coming in from different faith traditions and things like that. And so it's kind of interesting to, come up with that kind of thing, and then you bring up, what if somebody, what if there's a Terry Schiavo? What does Masonry say to that, if anything? And it's kind of, how do you measure this subjective concept of prudence and its objective effects, which is the application.
I'm going to argue the opposite. I'm going to say you can't. Although, I do think that there's some inherent notion of good and evil or right and wrong. Every decision we make is based on our own personal life experience, and no one else has that same insight, nor can we get that. It kind of goes back to every person you'll ever meet knows something that you don't know, right? The decisions made by the people just following orders during the rise of Nazi Germany, they thought they were making prudent decisions. Obviously, hindsight says it was completely out of context and was not the right decision, but they were following orders and they believed they were making the best decision they had with the choices they had. So who's to say, right? I mean, it can only be subjective. I'll argue that.
Did we really just break Godwin's law on this show?
The longer TMR goes, the probability of referencing Nazism approaches 1.
See, we're all done now. We don't have to worry about that.
Good question, Taylor. Good question.
So let's see. Brother Ken Lotman from Texas, who is going to be down at the Texas Grand Communication with our TMR bookmarks. So if you're in Texas and you're going to Grand Lodge in Texas, hit up Brother Ken Lotman because he's got a whole slew of our bookmarks. Ken actually posted a shot of Mackey's Encyclopedia on Prudence, and it's interesting that for those of us who are using the Preston Webb ritual, which is basically everybody except for Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania's weird. Everybody who's taken the first degree and has heard that first degree lecture actually has heard those 4 cardinal virtues explained quite nicely in relationship to some of the other pieces of education imparted to the entered apprentice during that degree, which we can't go into here, sadly. But it is one of the definitions, according to Preston, is prudence is the true guide to human understanding, and it consists in judging and determining with propriety what is to be said or done upon all our occasions, what dangers we should endeavor to avoid, and how to act in all our difficulties. And as Mackey points out, that is not nearly the best out of the 2 definitions. So if you're in a state other than Pennsylvania, go back to an EA degree and listen closely for the 4 cardinal virtues to be described in the lecture, and you'll know what we're talking about.
And before we lose all our Pennsylvania listeners.
No. We love Pennsylvania. They're awesome.
There was an interesting comment on Reddit this week because we talked about the Masonic Services Association of North America and how they released the new membership numbers. That someone mentioned on Reddit that Pennsylvania, the highest ranking state for membership, has lost more members in 2014 than they have in all of Utah. So, dropping like flies. That's an amazing statistic. I don't know.
Wow. So yeah. After that, also Taylor mentioned his wife is watching. She thinks we're a bunch of nerds. Fact. Moving on.
I retract my wife comment earlier.
Yes. Michael Overturf mentions, he made the observation that the 4 cardinal virtues actually fit very, very well into the 24-inch gauge. And, he's got 6 hours to work on each, but during the time of the day you have to incorporate them all at the same time at certain times. it's really interesting. We talked about how the four cardinal virtues really fit into circumscribing your passions and fit into kind of the idea of the compasses as a symbol. But we have to exercise temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice with our time as well. And it's just something neat. It's all connected, man.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Alrighty. I think it's about time to start wrapping it up. Great conversations tonight. So let's go right to, I don't know, I'm going to pick one of the Johnsons, rolling a dice. Robert, you win.
Sorry I couldn't contribute more to the discussion tonight. It was something that I have never really dove into. Being the four cardinal virtues have come through in a lot of my philosophical research. This one in general, I can't say that a whole lot that I've read, dwelled on it in any real fashion. And as in previous episodes where we talk about these virtues, I feel like this is the conversations that are missing in lodges. To sit around and just talk about, pick a subject, pick one piece of a power, if you could turn the degree into a PowerPoint, pick a bullet point and nail it for 45 minutes to an hour. This has been fantastic. Whereas the first two, again, I knew about, I've read about, I've applied a lot of that to my daily life. And I've applied prudence to my daily life as well, but what we talked about this evening was just great. Eye-opening, definitely I am in the right room tonight. You're in the wrong room if you're the smartest person in the room, you know what I'm saying? So definitely in the right room. Many thanks to you guys for all the light imparted this evening. And with that, thank you for watching this program.
All right. Thank you, Robert. Nick Johnson.
Oh boy, me.
Final thoughts?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll be the guy who quotes from the monitor as usual. But here's how it goes. Prudence. This virtue should be the peculiar characteristic of every Mason, not only for the government of his conduct while in the lodge, but also when abroad in the world. It should be particularly attended to in all strange and mixed company. And then it goes back to, prudence teaches us to regulate our lives and actions agreeably to the dictates of reason. So, it's one of those that, this is, again, we've already discussed this, the application of wisdom. Sophia being the theoretical style concept of wisdom in the Grecian Athenian way, and this is the applied way, the actual having to work and regulate yourself, fitting yourself within the building to ensure that the seams are tight and the world is a better place for it. And so, that's the thing, is prudence is one of those that we have to exercise, just like I said with the other ones. It's an exercised virtue. It's something that you have to do. And the cardinal virtues, all of them being applied ethical standards, this one I think is pretty much one of the most, I think this is, at least is the most important one that we can use, because justice, you might not necessarily have to use it at all times. Fortitude, hopefully you don't have to use fortitude often. Temperance, hopefully you can handle that on a daily basis, and you're not Jessica Jones, and you can just handle it. Oh, yes, I dropped that one. I dropped that reference. I'm on episode 9. I'm getting there. I know. I'm so excited.
We almost went one whole episode without a comic book reference.
I know, and I had to drop it. I had to drop it like it's hot, because let me tell you, that show. Anyway, going back to it, and so for me, this is the application of wisdom. This is the application of ethics. This is the application of doing right by people every single day. And so I'll end this with a thought from Transcendentalist, one of my favorites, Amos Bronson Alcott. who said, "Prudence is the footprint of wisdom." And I think that sums up exactly what we've been saying tonight. So with the millennialfreemason.com. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Nick. Excellent wrap-up. Jason.
So as we go through these 4 cardinal virtues, it's really easy, I think, to talk about and understand, where we could make these fit into our lives, as Masons and our brothers in the lodge. But it's much more difficult, I think, to put them into practice and keep putting them into practice. And really, again, we've talked about this time and time again. These 4 virtues align directly with a lot of things that we're taught even in the Entered Apprentice degree. Managing our time, making sure that we give enough time for our families, controlling our actions, subduing our passions. You have to exercise these 4 virtues in order to do just that. So in a lot of ways, these virtues are the foundation for what we try to do every single day as Masons. And they deserve, I think, a lot more study than they get in lodges today. It's interesting. These 4 virtues factor very, very, very heavily into Catholicism today. You look up the virtues, these 4 cardinal virtues, and 9 out of 10 articles are from a Catholic source or a homily or something of that nature. And I think Masons can do these virtues justice by digging into some of these deep philosophical treatises on these virtues and pull out the meat of really what these mean today in today's fraternity, especially as we're shifting away from a Rotarian, got it this time, society, and more to an inward-focused, esoteric, self-betterment type of society.
Excellent.
So, yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. We love you guys for sticking with us. Please keep your comments coming, especially on social media. Please keep topics coming and topic ideas because we absolutely love those. And get ready, by the way, January 12th is going to be our 100th episode. It's going to be awesome. We're going to announce winners of the Spark Light campaign. It's going to be a longer episode than normal because we have something very, very special planned for everybody. And you're going to want to be there live, if at all possible, because it's going to be amazing.
It's definitely going to be worth missing Lodge for if you're not an officer.
Yes, that is true.
Not a degree, and it's not if it's just a stated when you're not an officer, nothing's going to be going crazy at your lodge. You want to be at the 100th episode.
We don't typically impose on our listeners' time, or we do so as little as possible because your own life comes first. But this episode is going to be incredible, and viewer participation, I think, is going to be paramount to its success as an episode.
How's that for a build-up, huh?
And we got 5 weeks to let you down.
Just gonna build it all up, and it's going to be about tacos.
Yes.
And cold Lodge mashed potatoes.
Yes. Masonic green beans. Okay, I guess that goes to me now. Wrapping things up. Also, to reiterate for those who are just listening, the Sparklight campaign is for those who wish. Can buy a pin from us to help keep the show running and get one of these sexy, sexy bookmarks that Jason's holding.
Yep.
And when you get your favorite TMR bookmark, or make one yourself, draw a skull on it, draw a square compass, and we'll take it. But put it in a book that you like, share, post it on Facebook or Twitter with the hashtag Sparklight. Let us know what your favorite book is you like to read. What's inspired you? I love learning about all the things that inspire you. I get a lot of good reading ideas, a lot of things in my queue from you guys. So definitely spark that light that you are getting out of your readings. And the best way to do that is to share a photo of that with one of our bookmarks that you can find at themasonicroundtable.com. In conclusion, I did this last week, and I think it's a good thing to continue on. The symbolism, as you'll see in artwork, of Prudence can be found as a book, a scroll, or a mirror, occasionally attacked by a serpent. I'm not sure why the serpent's attacking it, but I think the mirror is kind of interesting
You don't know why it's attacked by the serpent.
It's a serpent, It's
John, it's so obvious.
Duh.
We're talking later, buddy.
Yes.
And Tremors. I mean, seriously, Kevin Bacon. That's
Bacon.
exactly what it's about.
Kevin Bacon. There's
man.
the first.
Graboid.
Did someone say bacon?
But I think definitely going back and contemplating your decisions is a key aspect of Prudence. I've learned a lot from this episode. I think this is what Masonry is all about. This is the system of morality, taking all of these pieces of philosophy and education and trying to mix it together to make you a better person. And that is how we take good men and make them better. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for January 12th for episode 100, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.